Hey guys, how you doing? My name's Charlie Lane, I'm 17 and I'm an alcoholic. I wanted to start this video that way because it will force me to be open and honest. Now, before I start, just so I'm following the community guidelines, this isn't affiliated with any sort of organisation. This is not affiliated with AA, NA or any other fellowship. I am purely here to express my experience, strength and hope. I'm not a guidance counsellor, I'm not a psychiatrist, I'm not a therapist. I'm purely just a sober alcoholic and a sober drug addict, sharing my story with you all. So I started drinking when I was at a really young age. I was probably about 8 years old when I had my first drink. I remember the night vividly. I remember my father, used to have a scotch, a bourbon and Coca-Cola. I remember I had that first drink that night thinking that it was Coke and remembering it tasted a bit funny. And I remember just like downing the whole thing and drinking the whole glass of whatever it was. And I didn't know it was bourbon. And my dad took a lot of amusement in going, "You've just sculled a whole glass of bourbon and Coke." And it was predominantly bourbon. So I remember that night this is 8 years old, first drink ever, first drop of alcohol that's ever entered my body. I remember I was horrendously sick that night. I remember I was throwing up bile, and even at 8 years old, there was something in my head that went, I want to do this again. When I can get my hands on this, I want to do it again. Fast forward a few years, I'm in high school. I remember I've always been a person that's been addicted to danger. Now, I say this because when I first found groups of people just like me who shared their stories, that was one thing that I identified with, being addicted to danger, being addicted to the chase of things, being addicted to people who some people would describe as, born on the wrong side of the wrong side of the tracks, and I loved that. I loved the drama. I loved the adrenaline rush that went with that. I almost loved the trouble that I'd get in as well. And that led me down a really bad path. Now, I never had an inkling. I come from an alcoholic family. I come from a very long line of alcoholism and addiction, but I never thought, and I knew that, right? Like I knew that I was in no denial and no oblivion that I had come from that long family tree of addiction and alcoholism. I thought that I'd be the first one out of the whole family to break that cycle, and that's the insanity. So fast forward to high school, I'm associating with kids who are, like I said, are kind of on the rougher side of the scheme of things, and I loved that. As I've said, I really enjoyed that excitement and that bit of danger. So soon enough, I remember I had my first real drunk at a mate's house when I was in year 7. So I would have been probably around 12, entering maybe 13 years old at this point. I remember we snuck behind. Actually, he'd swabbed a bottle of Bailey's Irish cream, I think it was, and he lived in a rural part of Australia. Like he lived on a big block of land, like big farmland, and there was a primary school down the road. And I remember we went down there, and we went behind this big water tank because there was cars passing by, and we thought that we were all cool and stuff, and there was a couple of others, and we went behind there. And I remember the other ones like it was like our, this is our first drink, like this is our first sip of alcohol. This is going to be this is exciting. I remember seeing them my friends at that time, like taking little swigs, and I remember that being alien to me, going, why would you just take little swigs? Why wouldn't you scull the whole bottle? So when the bottle came around to me, I chugged about that much of it. And that's not a bragging rights thing. This is just trying to see, you know, this is for people to maybe say, I've done that too. So that's maybe 12 or 13 years old. And this time I didn't get sick. This time was the first time I ever got drunk. And I remember walking back to the house, and that was it for me. I thought, I found it. I found the answer to everything. Now I had things, going on. I had a bit of childhood trauma that had been eating away at me. So I thought, and I always kind of felt a little bit different to everyone else. It was kind of like being on the outside of the glass and looking in a way. So I guess you could say in a sense I felt kind of alienated from the rest of the world. And alcohol made me feel normal. Alcohol made me feel more like a human being rather than an alien. So I kept doing it. And I kept it under wraps. I remember that was when the real obsession and obsessing over how I could get it and how I could, because the legal drinking age to buy anything in Australia, to buy cigarettes, in America it's 21, in Australia it's 18. And so obviously a 12-year-old, 13-year-old, you walk up to a, liquor store and say, hey, can I get this? They'll tell you to go away. So I remember having to really premeditate it. I remember, trying to find, hanging around the front of bottle shops and, in America you guys call them off licenses or, just a liquor store. We call them bottle-os or bottle shops. And I remember hanging around there and waiting for the really eerie kind of dodgy looking guy to come around, and I'd say, hey, can you go and get me the cheapest bottle of wine, the cheapest bottle of rum, the cheapest bottle of whatever it was. If it was going to get me out of myself, I wanted it. And I'd say, throwing a pack of cigarettes in the way in. And I thought I was firing. I thought I was cooler than all my friends. I thought that I was, mysterious, this mysterious sort of, self-medicating person. And this was around about, I'd say 13, 14. So I was definitely on my way to self-destructive alcoholism. I think it came around when I started entering into 2015. I lost my sister to suicide, and this was in June of 2015. And that year for me was a downward spiral in so many ways. I had lost any sort of direction, any sort of knowing what I wanted to do, any sense of motivation, any sense of inspiration, anything. I felt dull. And that was the real beginning of a downward spiral for me. That was the pinnacle. And I felt numb. Shortly after that, I went to a party, and at that point, the alcoholism was starting to really kick the spurs in. I remember one night I was at a party, and I got drunk. Said a few things I shouldn't have, and got jumped by 6 guys, and in which I had a knife pulled on me. Didn't get stabbed, fortunately, but that I've always been a really soft sort of person now, and we'll get to that later, the whole bravado thing. But I've always been really soft, not a natural fighter. So that really traumatized me. So what did I do? I self-medicated, and I was that was, you know, how to handle my PTSD, my anxiety, my depression, my trauma, you name it. So I kept doing it. I drank, and at that point I'd ventured into dabbling in different types of drugs. The first gateway drug was for me. It's not a gateway for everyone, but for an addict and an alcoholic like me with my tendencies, marijuana was my gateway drug to everything else in that world. But so on the flip side, so we're going from 2015 into 2016, and in this one I'll cover 2017 as well. Something changed in me. I entered into my first year, my first proper year at a new school, and I developed this thing in my head that I was never going to be scared again. I was never going to be afraid of anyone or anything or any environment ever again. And that may have been because of the events that had happened in the previous year, and I believe that it is. And of course alcohol and drugs aided that, and I developed this false sense of strength, you know, that whole bravado, like I'm, you know, bigger than I should be, and I'm you know, I'm this immovable object and you can't hurt me and you can't touch me, all that bullshit. And it worked for a little while, you know. I started, you know, being like, I'm gonna hurt you so you can't hurt me, you know, that mental thinking of I'm gonna hit you where it hurts, physically, mentally, verbally, emotionally, so you can't come back at me with anything. I wanted to be indestructible and never have to feel anything again. At this point, I hooked up with some guys. I'm a musician, and I hooked up with two blokes who I clicked with instantly. It was just lights on, awesome. We formed a band, and that band was great. It gave me an outlet temporarily for all the anger and depression that I was feeling. But in the corner, like on one hand there was, you know, all this, you know, we were constantly going up and up and up, writing. But in the other sense, my self-esteem and my self-image of myself, my view of myself was just going down. And of course, it goes without saying, my alcoholism and addiction and my addictive tendencies were just doing push-ups in the corner. And of course, when you're in the music industry, a lot of that is just handed to you on a plate. You don't even have to pay for it. So I thought, awesome. But for some reason I was able to, I knew that it was a problem because I felt the need to hide all that from my band members. And for a while I was actually considered the cleanest one in the group, which was so far from the truth. I was doing methamphetamine on the side, I was drinking here, doing other things here, you name it, I did it. And that was really damaging for me because I had to lie about everything. And that's the other thing, was through this, I was putting up this false bravado again. Like I was, you know, indestructible, nothing can hurt me, I'm great, you're less than me, I'm better than you, all that. And all of this was just eating away at me inside. I've cut into 2017, this all started to take a toll on me, but I didn't realise it for what it was. I thought that this was just a normal part of growing up. Relationships end, new ones come in, you know, new friendships, new relationships, and all the other ones just get pushed aside and you forget about them. That was not a smooth transition for me. You know, some people lose relationships, some people burn bridges. I explode bridges, as I like to call it. I don't burn bridges, I explode them. It's almost like, you know, you're good for now, but as soon as I'm done with you, you're out of the picture. And that was the way that I did it. And I've learned since being in recovery and sobriety that's almost like a survival mechanism, a survival technique that's so deeply ingrained in my conscience and my in myself that I didn't even know, that I must have adapted to way back when all that trauma was happening. And it all ties in together, all that trauma of, you're scared, so what do you want to do? You build this false image of yourself, so you're trying to never be scared again. So it all ties in with itself. I do remember bits and pieces of 2017, early 2018, but it was kind of a blur. But one thing that does stick with me is that I did some horrendous things. Now, I won't go into detail, but basically in a nutshell, you would see me extremely differently. People who know me, that is, would see me extremely differently if I opened up right now publicly. The things I've done in active alcoholism and an active addiction. And that's why I go to places where there are other people who I can share my deep, dark secrets with, and that's a safe space, and someone else will be able to say, I've done that too. Basically, what happened, I've explained how it was, and this is what happened. I found, I'd been aware of the 12-step program, and I'd been aware of that because all my some family members had been in the fellowship of that particular group, so I knew where to go. So I thought, well, one day I was sitting on my couch and I was having a drink, and I think I was smoking pot at the same time, and I thought, I need to snap out of this, I need to get help. So I rang this family member and said, where's the nearest group meeting that I can go to? And so they took me there, and I identified from my first meeting. Now, does this mean that I stayed sober since then? No, it does not. This was in June of 2018, and it has taken me 3 goes to get some good, solid sobriety under my belt. Now, I don't believe in quantity. I believe in actually quality over quantity, because that's what matters to me and that's what works for me. I couldn't get that I was powerless over my addictions. I couldn't get that the wreckage of my past was inadvertently affecting everything that has led up to the present moment. I thought that it was everyone else's fault. I thought that it was, I thought that it was, I had nothing to do with it. That the world was just fucked, and that I was just so hardly done by, which is so far from the truth. I've had an amazing upbringing, a great life. Of course, things have happened to me, but everything that has gone wrong in my life, there has been something that I've done to inflict that upon myself. Now, I am no sobriety guru, but my singleness of purpose is to carry this message to the suffering alcoholic and the suffering addict, and in the hope that someone will identify with my story. And even if it's one person who says, hey, I really get it, that is why I'm starting this channel and uploading this, because raw honesty saves a lot of lives, and I will definitely not be able to keep my sobriety if I don't give some of it away, you know what I mean? So basically, the turning point and getting serious about myself and my sobriety was a night like many other nights, except this night I powered my way through a lot of alcohol, a toxic amount of drugs, and I woke up on a bathroom floor and came to the realization as a result of one of my friends telling me that I had to be resuscitated over 3 times because I had lost my pulse. Now, that was the turning point for me. That was what made me go, oh my God, I'm gonna die. It's been said a lot that a lot of people say I have another drink in me, but I don't have another recovery in me. Now at this point I'd given sobriety about two goes, maybe three. I think I said three before, but I think this is my fourth go. It had taken me 3 tries, and I completely dismissed it until that morning, where I realised I'm going to die if I don't change. And it wasn't just the physical damage it was doing to myself or the mental damage, it was the damage that I was doing to the people around me. Not on purpose, but because I was so in self and so selfish and self-centered, I did not see that my family was getting worried about me, my girlfriend was getting worried about me, some of my friends were even getting worried about me. The ones that had stuck around long enough to see me, you know, and hoped for the best, hoped that I'd get the message, hoped that I'd get well, they saw, and they were getting really worried. So I went back into the 12 steps and I hit it as hard as I could. I didn't see it anymore as a get sober or drink matter anymore. I saw it as a get sober or die matter. And of course, there are some times where I get that urge to, and I get that voice in my head that says, maybe one drink won't hurt, maybe one of this won't hurt, maybe one of that won't hurt. Bullshit. I've never just had one drink. I've never just had one and left it at that. I've always gone way too far, pushed the envelope as far to the edge as I could, and it's always left me in the same place. Hurt, other people hurt. I've done more damage to myself, more damage to others. The cycle continues. So I chose to break that cycle. And how I've kept it and is what I'm going to get into next. Basically, how I kept it was I attended regular meetings. Now for tradition purposes of the 12-step fellowships, I can't actually mention the name. I mean, you can, but I choose not to, just to keep my anonymity pretty personal and to not promote. But I'm happy for anyone to message me and ask where to go if you don't know, and it's pretty far to the front of the phone book if you want to. No, I'm pretty sure I'm not hiding anything here. I'm pretty sure you know what I'm talking about. I just can't say the name. Anyway, I attend regular meetings of those groups. They're not hard to find. I attend them, even though I am actually at this point where I'm from. I'm actually the youngest person in the fellowships. I'm not. There's not, you know, there are a couple of people who are just that little bit older than me, but at this point I am the youngest. And that's the thing, there's that stigma of you're too young to be an alcoholic, you're too young to be a drug addict, you're too young to this, you're just having fun, you're just a young dude. If you have a problem, you have a problem. It's like it's like people who are anaphylactic. If you have a nut allergy, you don't eat nuts. I have the same thing, except my thing is I'm allergic to alcohol, I'm allergic to drugs, I can't just stop at one. The difference is people with nut allergies don't eat nuts. People with alcohol allergies will have a drink of alcohol and want more, regardless of the effect. And these groups have been the only way that these groups of people that I go to meetings and regularly attend are filled with people who have got the same, similar or the same stories as me. I call my sponsor as much as I can, and I work the 12-step program as much as I possibly can. I engage in regular exercise. I believe that it helps my mental state, and I believe that it also keeps me in good shape. But it's a personal journey, and I really hope that everyone who's got a problem does find the help that they need, and achieve sobriety. Now this will be a regular channel that I'm hoping that I can post as much as possible as an update to my sobriety. I'm very early days still, but all I can do from this point on is share my story, my journey, my experience, my strength and my hope with the alcoholic and the drug addict who still suffers, because it's all the same. It's not an active, it's not shameful to put your hand up and say, hey, I've got a problem. It actually shows a lot of character, and I urge anyone who is struggling to send me a message via YouTube, or if you know me personally, via Facebook, via Instagram, via Snapchat, anything. It really, your well-being means just as much to me as my own. And I really hope that anyone watching this and is wanting to get sober really grabs onto that and really tries to turn their life around. And yeah, thanks very much.